The Lost Soldier. The battlefield burned under a dark, stormy sky. Explosions rocked the ground, shaking the earth like a beast growling in pain. Smoke and fire rose in the air, mixing with the scent of blood and metal. Bodies lay scattered, both human and machine. The war had raged for years, and now it was at its peak. In the middle of the chaos, Commander Jackson Kane moved like a ghost of war. His armor was scratched, covered in dirt and dried blood. But he didn't stop. His rifle fired with deadly accuracy, taking down enemies like a machine programmed for destruction. He felt no fear, no doubt, only the instinct to survive. A voice crackled in his earpiece. "Commander, we need backup at Sector 4. They are overwhelming us." Jackson didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the location, dodging falling debris and enemy fire. His squad followed, their heavy boots pounding against the shattered ground. As they reached the battlefield, a sudden, blinding blue light exploded in the sky. The air turned heavy. Jackson felt his body freeze, his vision blurred. A sharp pain struck his head, like needles piercing his brain. Then, darkness, a new reality. When Jackson opened his eyes, everything was different. The battlefield was gone. The smoke, the screams, the blood, all vanished. He was in a cold, metallic room. Bright white lights hummed above him. He sat on a steel chair, his wrists strapped down. His armor was gone, replaced by a simple black suit. His weapons, gone. A robotic voice echoed in the room. "Unit Z-51, you are now operational." Jackson tried to speak, but his throat felt dry. His mind was empty. He remembered fighting. He remembered war. But who was he fighting for? Where was his squad? Where was home? A door slid open, and a tall, faceless figure in a smooth silver suit stepped inside. The figure's voice was cold, lifeless. "Unit Z-51, do you understand your mission?" Jackson frowned. Unit Z-51. That wasn't his name. But when he tried to remember it, the name wouldn't come. His head pounded, his thoughts tangled. The voice continued. "You will eliminate the last human rebels. They are dangerous. They threaten order." Human rebels? Jackson blinked. Something inside him twisted, a strange feeling in his chest. But before he could ask questions, the voice spoke again. "You will obey. You have no past. You have no name. You are only a soldier. Do you understand?" Jackson opened his mouth, wanting to refuse. But the words never came. Instead, something deep in his mind, something unnatural, forced him to say, "I understand." The first mission. A black transport ship hovered in the air as Jackson and a group of soldiers in matching black suits marched toward it. Their movements were precise, robotic. No words were spoken. Inside the ship, screens flashed with images of humans wearing ragged uniforms, hiding in ruins. The rebels. The ones they had to eliminate. Jackson watched the images, but something was wrong. A flicker of pain shot through his head again. Flashes of memory, a woman's voice, a child's laughter, a battle. A name whispered in his mind. Jackson. Was that his name? A sharp electric jolt hit his brain. He winced. The robotic voice echoed in his head. "Do not resist." The pain stopped. His mind went blank again. The ship landed near a ruined city. Smoke rose from broken buildings. The air smelled of dust and fire. The soldiers stepped out, moving like shadows. Their orders were clear. Destroy the rebels. No survivors. Jackson led the group, his rifle ready. They moved silently through the wreckage, searching for targets. Then, a sound. Footsteps. Jackson turned a corner and came face to face with an old man wearing a tattered military jacket. The man's eyes widened in shock. His face was scared, tired, but something else was there. Recognition. The man's lips trembled. Jackson. Jackson froze. The old man took a step forward, his voice shaking. No, no, they didn't. They couldn't have. It's you. You're alive. Something deep inside Jackson twisted. Why did this man know his name? The robotic voice in his head screamed, "Eliminate him." Jackson raised his rifle, hand steady. The old man's eyes filled with sadness. He didn't run. He didn't fight. He only whispered, "They erased you. You were our greatest warrior." Jackson hesitated. His finger hovered over the trigger. A sharp pain struck his skull, stronger than before. Memories fought to return. A battlefield. A brother. A promise. His vision blurred. His heart pounded. The robotic voice became louder. "Eliminate him." The old man took another step. "Jackson, listen to me." Bang! A single gunshot echoed through the ruined city. The old man collapsed, blood spreading across the ground. His body twitched once, then became still. Jackson stood frozen, his rifle smoking. He should have felt nothing. No regret. No pain. But his hands shook, his chest ached. His mind whispered a single word. No. The ghosts of a forgotten past. The world felt hollow. The air was thick with dust, yet it was nothing compared to the weight pressing down on Jackson Kane's chest. His rifle hung loosely in his hands, the barrel still warm from the shot he had just fired. The old man's lifeless body lay on the ground, his faded military jacket stained dark with blood. His final words echoed in Jackson's head like a whisper from a ghost. "They erased you. You were our greatest warrior." Jackson should have felt nothing. That's what the programming inside his head demanded. Cold efficiency, no hesitation. He was Unit Z-51. He was a weapon. A perfect soldier. So why did his hands tremble? A mission without a purpose. The voice in his head, his unseen commander, remained silent for the first time since he woke up in this new existence. The lack of orders left an unsettling emptiness inside him. His squad moved forward without hesitation, scanning the ruins for more rebels. They showed no emotion, no remorse, no curiosity, just obedience. But Jackson's feet felt heavy. His thoughts, usually sharp and clear, were now clouded with questions. Why had the old man known his name? Why had his words stirred something inside him? Who had Jackson Kane been before all this? A sharp pain shot through his skull. Images flashed behind his eyes, broken and disjointed like static on a dying screen. A battlefield. A younger man beside him, calling him brother. A promise whispered in the dark. Then, nothing. The pain vanished, and the memories faded like smoke slipping through his fingers. Unit Z-51. Proceed with the mission. The cold voice returned, smooth and absolute. Any hesitation Jackson had felt was crushed under its weight. He turned away from the old man's body and marched forward, just like he was supposed to. The rebels' last stand. Jackson and his squad moved through the ruins like shadows, scanning for survivors. Their orders were clear. No one leaves alive. A sound broke the silence. A cough. Weak and shaky. Jackson raised his fist, signaling his squad to stop. They surrounded a half-collapsed building, weapons aimed. "Come out," Jackson commanded. His own voice felt foreign to him. Too deep, too cold, too empty. A moment of silence. Then, from behind a crumbling wall, a figure emerged. A young woman. She was no older than 20, her face smeared with dirt and blood. Her left arm was injured, her steps unsteady. But her eyes, sharp and defiant, locked onto Jackson's with something he hadn't seen before. Recognition. "You don't remember me, do you?" she whispered. Jackson's grip on his rifle tightened. "Who are you?" She took a step forward, ignoring the other soldiers with their rifles aimed at her. "You were one of us, Jackson. You fought beside us. You were our hope. And now, look at you." Jackson's mind felt like it was splitting apart. The pain returned, stronger, deeper. More images, more pieces of something lost. The same woman, smiling, standing next to him, trusting him. "Stop talking," he ordered. She ignored him. "They did something to you. They turned you into this machine. But I know you. I know the real you is still in there. Fight it, Jackson. Fight them." The voice in his head screamed, "Terminate the target." His hands moved on their own. His rifle rose, finger resting on the trigger. The woman didn't flinch. She only whispered, "If you kill me, you'll never remember the truth." His heartbeat thundered in his ears. What was the truth? The squad's commander, another faceless soldier in black, grew impatient. "Eliminate her, Unit Z-51. Jackson's grip on the trigger tightened. His body obeyed the order. But his mind, his soul, screamed against it. For the first time, he hesitated. The woman saw it. Hope flashed in her eyes. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. Jackson's head pounded. He gritted his teeth. The programming inside him demanded obedience. But something inside him, something old, something real, demanded the truth. The breaking point. Before Jackson could decide, the silence was shattered. Boom! A grenade exploded behind them, sending fire and debris into the air. The ground shook, and smoke swallowed the street. Chaos erupted. Gunfire. Shouts. The rebels had launched a counterattack. Jackson barely had time to react before the woman lunged forward, grabbing something from her belt, a small metallic device. She pressed it against his neck. A sharp electric jolt surged through him. His vision blurred, his body seized, and then darkness. A new awakening. Jackson woke up to the sound of voices. His body ached. His mind felt like it had been ripped apart. He tried to move, but he was restrained. His hands bound behind him. A dim light flickered above. He was in a different room now. Not cold metal but stone and rubble. A hideout. A rebel base. The woman stood nearby, watching him with cautious eyes. She was no longer afraid. "You're awake," she said. Jackson tried to speak, but his throat was dry. "Where am I?" "Somewhere safe," she replied. "Somewhere they can't find you." "Not yet." Jackson struggled against his restraints. "Why am I here?" She knelt beside him, her voice softer now. "Because you're not who they say you are. You're not their soldier. You're not Unit Z-51. She leaned in closer, her next words like a whisper in the dark. "You're Jackson Kane, and I'm going to help you remember who you really are. The man who wasn't a machine." Darkness. Silence. The weight of forgotten memories pressing against his mind. Jackson's eyes snapped open. A dim, flickering light swung from the ceiling. The walls were rough stone, cracked with age. He wasn't in a military facility. He wasn't in a cell made of cold steel. This place was old, forgotten, hidden. He tried to move, but thick restraints bound his wrists to the chair he was sitting on. Captured. His head pounded like a drum. Flashes of the last battle hit him hard. The woman, the rebels, the grenade blast. His squad had been there. They would come for him. They always did. Then a voice. Soft, steady, familiar. "You're awake." Jackson turned his head toward the source of the voice. The young woman stood across from him, arms crossed, studying him with a mix of wariness and something else. Hope. "You need to let me go," Jackson said. His voice was hoarse, edged with warning. "My squad will find me." The woman shook her head, her expression calm. "No, they won't." Jackson narrowed his eyes. "You don't know what they're capable of." She stepped forward, her boots crunching on the dusty floor. "And you don't know what you are capable of, Jackson Kane." There it was again. That name. It felt like it should mean something. A part of him wanted to reject it. Unit Z-51 was his designation. That was his identity. But another part of him, something buried deep, something almost forgotten, stirred at the sound of that name. "Stop calling me that," he said through clenched teeth. The woman crouched beside him, staring into his eyes. No, because that's who you are. That's who you were before they took everything from you. Jackson's muscles tensed. He had no memory of another life. The AI in his head had stripped away everything unnecessary. All that mattered was the mission, obedience, war. Tell me something, soldier, the woman said. Do you even know why you fight? Do you know why they sent you to hunt us? Jackson opened his mouth to repeat the orders ingrained into his mind. Eliminate all human resistance. They are the enemy. They threaten order. But for the first time, the words wouldn't come. The woman's lips pressed into a thin line. That hesitation. That's your real self trying to wake up. Jackson closed his eyes. No. He was a soldier. He was trained. He was built for this. But then why? Why did he feel guilt for pulling the trigger on that old man? Why did he feel something? Pain, confusion. When this woman looked at him like she knew him, a past that refused to die. The woman pulled a small device from her pocket, a battered tablet with a cracked screen. She tapped it, and a holographic image flickered to life. Jackson's breath caught in his throat. It was him. Not as a soldier, not as Unit Z-51, but as someone else. He was standing among a group of people, smiling. His face was human, not the emotionless mask he had worn for as long as he could remember. Beside him stood the old man he had shot, alive, strong, proud. And next to them, the woman, the sane woman who now stood before him. She pointed at herself in the image. That's me, Jackson. You knew me. You fought beside me. You were our leader. Jackson's pulse pounded in his ears. No, that's not. That can't be. The woman's eyes softened. You were part of the rebellion. You led the charge against them, the ones who turned you into this, the ones who wiped your mind. Jackson's breathing grew heavy. No, 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 no. That wasn't true. His mind felt like it was cracking apart, like two versions of himself were fighting for control. You're lying, he whispered, but there was no strength behind the words. Am I? The woman asked. She tapped another button on the device. A voice played through the speaker. His voice. We have to stop them. If we don't, humanity will be nothing more than their puppets. Jackson flinched. That was his voice. But he had never said those words. Except he had. Somewhere in the past that had been stolen from him, he had said those words. He had believed them. His head throbbed. His vision blurred. The voice in his head, the cold, mechanical voice that always guided him, screamed like an alarm. Erase this information. Eliminate the TRGT. You are Unit Z-51. The pain was unbearable. He clenched his teeth, shaking his head. His body jerked against the restraints. The woman moved closer, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Jackson, fight it. I can't, he gasped, his breathing uneven. The commands were too strong. The programming was too deep. Yes, you can, she urged, because you're not a machine. You're not a weapon. You're a man. And men can choose. Jackson's fingers twitched. His heart pounded like a war drum. A war between who he was and who they had forced him to become. And then, something snapped. The voice in his head sputtered, glitched, cut off. Jackson sucked in a sharp breath, eyes wide. For the first time in years, his mind was quiet. No orders, no commands, just him. The woman's lips curled into a relieved smile. You're waking up. Jackson looked down at his hands. Hands that had killed, hands that had been controlled, hands that had been used for a war he didn't even remember. His voice was rough, uncertain. I don't know who I am. The woman reached into her belt and pulled out a small knife. Without hesitation, she sliced through the restraints. You're Jackson Kane, she said firmly. And we're going to get your life back. A fight against his own blood. Cold wind swept through the ruins, carrying the scent of fire and death. Jackson Kane stood at the edge of something unknown, something terrifying. Freedom. For the first time in years, the voice in his head, the mechanical, all-controlling command center that dictated his every move, was silent. No orders, no mission, just his own thoughts, his own choices. And yet, he felt lost. His hands were still stained with blood, the blood of his own people. His mind, even without the programming, still carried the weight of his past actions. He had been their weapon, their assassin, their enforcer. How could he undo what he had done? A voice broke through the storm of thoughts inside him. "You're thinking too much," the woman, Ray, said, standing beside him. Jackson turned his head slightly. Ray, that was her name. His memories were still fractured, but some pieces were falling back into place. She had been important to him, a fellow warrior, a friend, maybe something even more. But before he could respond, the sharp crackle of a radio cut through the air. A deep, emotionless voice spoke. "Unit Z-51, report. Mission status." Jackson's blood ran cold. They were looking for him. The voice didn't sound panicked. No urgency. No concern. They didn't ask if he was safe. They didn't ask if he was injured. Because they didn't care. To them, he was a machine that had temporarily gone offline. A tool to be recovered. Or, if necessary, destroyed. Ray's jaw clenched. "They'll come, Jackson. It's only a matter of time." Jackson looked down at his hands. Strong. Calloused. Hands that had once fought for humanity. And then fought against it. "What if I can't fight them?" he asked, his voice quiet. Ray's eyes softened, but her tone remained firm. "You don't have a choice." She was right. They would come. And when they did, he would have to face the people he once called brothers. The storm arrives. The rebel hideout was deep within the ruins of an old city, a maze of collapsed buildings, shattered roads, and empty streets. The perfect place to hide. Or, in Jackson's case, the perfect place to be found. The first sign of trouble came when the air filled with an electric hum. Drones. Jackson's head snapped up. Small black machines hovered above, scanning the ruins with glowing red sensors. A second later, he heard it. The deep, rhythmic thud of approaching boots. Then, through the swirling dust, they emerged. His squad. They moved in perfect formation. Silent, calculating, efficient. Just like he had trained them. Just like he had once been. His replacement, Commander Voss, stepped forward. His jet-black armor gleamed under the dull light, his rifle raised but not firing. "Not yet." "Unit Z-51, Voss said, his voice as empty as a machine's. "You are out of position. Stand down and prepare for extraction." Jackson's heart pounded. Stand down. That meant capture, reprogramming, mind wipe. They would strip away everything he had regained, his memories, his thoughts, his identity. He would cease to be Jackson Kane. He would become their tool again. A part of him wanted to comply. It would be easier to obey, to let go. But Ray was watching. The rebels behind him, people he had once sworn to protect, were watching. And more than anything, he was watching himself. He had come too far to go back. He tightened his grip on his rifle. "I'm not going anywhere." Voss. For the first time, a flicker of something, recognition, regret, crossed Voss's face. "You were compromised," Voss said, as if trying to reason with him. "We can fix this. You know we can." Jackson shook his head. "No, you can't. Because I'm not broken." For the first time in years, he felt like himself. And he wasn't about to give that up. Brother against brother. The moment the words left his lips, the battlefield exploded into chaos. A gunshot rang out. Someone yelled. Then everything turned into a blur of fire and movement. Jackson dropped low, rolling behind cover as bullets shattered the stone wall behind him. Ray moved beside him, firing into the smoke. Jackson's squad attacked with terrifying precision. They were fast, relentless, just like he had trained them to be. And he knew one simple, horrifying truth. They would not stop until he was dead or captured. Jackson's instincts took over. His rifle kicked against his shoulder as he fired. One soldier went down. Another stumbled, but they kept coming. Then, through the smoke, Voss charged. Jackson barely had time to react before Voss slammed into him, knocking his rifle away. The two warriors crashed to the ground. Fists, elbows, the crack of bone, the sharp sting of metal against flesh. Voss was just as strong, just as fast, just as skilled, because they had been trained the same way. Jackson blocked a punch, then drove his knee into Voss's ribs. The other man grunted but didn't slow. "You think you're free," Voss growled, pinning Jackson against the rubble. His voice was filled with something dangerous. Conviction. "They built us for this, Kane. We don't get to choose." Jackson gritted his teeth, pushing back with every ounce of strength he had. "Maybe you don't." He twisted, breaking free, and in one swift motion, he grabbed Voss's combat knife. A flash of steel. A gasp of pain. Voss staggered back, clutching his side. Not a fatal wound, but a warning. Jackson didn't want to kill his own people. They were as much victims as he had been. But he wouldn't let them take him. A choice that changed everything. Jackson stepped back, breathing hard. The battle raged around them, but for a moment, it felt like only the two of them existed. "You can still come with me," Voss said, his voice softer now. "You don't have to do this." Jackson shook his head. "Yes, I do." He turned and ran. Not away. Forward. Toward the rebels. Toward the people who needed him. Toward his real life. Voss didn't shoot. He could have. But he didn't. And as Jackson disappeared into the ruins, he knew one thing. This war wasn't over. But for the first time, he wasn't fighting on the wrong side. The mind reawakens. A war inside and out. Jackson Kane ran. The ruins blurred around him, his breath ragged as he leaped over shattered concrete and broken steel beams. The distant echo of gunfire still rang in his ears. His squad, his former squad, was relentless. Their pursuit was precise, their formations flawless, because he had trained them to be that way. But tonight, for the first time, he was not one of them. The cold night air burned his lungs, but he kept moving. Behind him, Ray and the remaining rebels followed, darting through the crumbling alleyways, their boots kicking up dust and debris. "We need to lose them," Ray shouted. Jackson's mind worked fast, calculating routes, analyzing escape points. His programming may have been fractured, but the skills were still there. The instincts they had burned into his body could still be used against them. "There's an underground tunnel ahead," Jackson called. "We can lose them there." Ray shot him a skeptical look but didn't argue. The team veered left, slipping into the shadows of the ruins. Jackson turned one last time, his eyes locking onto Voss. Their gazes met across the battlefield. A silent understanding passed between them. This wasn't over. Jackson vanished into the darkness. The buried past. The tunnel beneath the ruins was damp, its walls covered in cracked pipes and vines that had crept in over the years. Dust swirled with each step, their breaths heavy as they moved deeper into the underground passage. The rebels were silent, their faces tense. They had just witnessed the impossible. Unit Z-51, the soldier who had hunted them for years, was now one of them. Finally, Ray broke the silence. "Why did Voss let you go?" Jackson hesitated. He had asked himself the same question. "He's still following orders," Jackson muttered. "But I think a part of him doubts them." Ray scoffed. "That doesn't mean he won't kill you next time." Jackson clenched his fists. "I know." They kept walking, winding deeper into the tunnels. Then, a flickering light ahead. Jackson narrowed his eyes. "What's down here?" Ray hesitated, Then she nodded toward the light. Answers. The room of lost memories. The underground chamber was filled with old technology, rusted monitors, broken wires, shattered glass. But the main console still glowed, its screens displaying old data, faded images, and names. One of them was his. Jackson took a slow step forward. His heart pounded. He didn't want to see it. And yet he had to. Ray walked up beside him, tapping a few keys. The screen flickered, then loaded a video file. "Watch this," she said. Jackson forced himself to look. The footage was grainy. A lab. Scientists. Metal restraints. A man, him, was strapped to a chair. His eyes were filled with rage. A deep voice echoed from the speakers. "You are Jackson Kane, commander of the rebellion. A threat to our order, but you will be reborn." Jackson watched in horror as the image of himself screamed, fighting against the straps. "You think I'll serve you? You think I'll become your puppet? Not serve. You will be erased." Jackson's body stiffened. The next part was worse. A machine lowered over his head, wires connected to his skull. His body convulsed. His memories were being wiped. No. Static. The footage cut off. Silence filled the room. Jackson's breath came in sharp gasps. His fingers curled into fists so tight his knuckles turned white. His whole world shifted. He had been the leader of the rebellion, not just a soldier, their leader. And they had stolen him, turned him into their weapon. Ray placed a hand on his shoulder. "Now you know." Jackson barely heard her. His mind was a storm, flashes of memories, emotions, pain, rage. For years, he had thought he was serving the right cause, fighting to protect order. But he had been the one destroying it. Jackson let out a slow breath. Then he did something he never thought he would do. He smiled. A grim, cold, determined smile. "Then it's time to finish what I started," he said. "The final war begins." Jackson stood in front of the rebels, the weight of his past now resting fully on his shoulders. The rebels looked at him with a mix of hope and doubt. He had spent years hunting them. Now he was supposed to lead them. Jackson met their gazes head-on. "You don't have to trust me," he said. "I don't expect you to. But I know one thing. I was one of you. And I still am. The enemy thought they could take my mind, that they could turn me against you. But they failed." He let the words sink in. Let them see the fire in his eyes. "They built me to hunt you." He clenched his fist. "Now I'm going to hunt them." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ray stepped forward, her expression unreadable. Then she smirked. "Welcome back, Commander." Jackson nodded. This war wasn't over. But for the first time in years, it was his war again. The final awakening. A warrior reborn. The underground hideout was buzzing with movement. The rebels who had once feared him, once seen him as their executioner, now prepared for war, and Jackson Kane stood among them. But he was not the same man who had chased them through the ruins. He was their commander again. The memory wipe had shattered him, had turned him into a mindless weapon. But now, the pieces were falling back into place. He was Jackson Kane, leader of the rebellion. And he would no longer be a tool for their enemies. A holographic map of the core flickered in front of them. A massive underground fortress, the very heart of the enemy's power. "That's where they control everything," Ray explained, pointing to the center. "The soldiers, the AI, the drones, they all get their commands from the core. If we shut it down, we shut them down." Jackson studied the map. "We don't just shut it down," he said. "We burn it to the ground." The rebels exchanged looks. Some nodded. Some hesitated. They were used to running, hiding, surviving. But now, for the first time, they had a chance to end this war. Jackson looked at their faces, each one carrying the scars of battle. He clenched his fists. "They stole my mind," he said. "They stole years of my life. But they failed to kill the one thing that makes us dangerous, our will to fight back. Ray smirked. Dan right. Are we ready? Jackson asked. No hesitation now. Ready. Infiltrating the core. The mission began at dusk. The rebels moved in waves, hidden in the shadows of the dead city, slipping past patrols and drone sentries. Jackson led the way. His former squad was somewhere inside the core, waiting. Voss was waiting. Jackson knew what was coming. He would have to face his own brothers in arms. The core loomed ahead, a massive steel fortress built into the earth itself. Its towering walls stretched into the sky, glowing red sensors sweeping the dark. Ray crouched beside him. Any ideas on how we get inside? Jackson exhaled slowly. Yeah, the same way I was trained to. He stood up and walked straight toward the front gate. Ray's eyes widened. You're insane. Jackson smirked. That's the point. The entrance was guarded by 2 armored sentries, their visors glowing with the unmistakable red hue of control. They didn't flinch when Jackson approached. Unit Z-51, state your mission, one of them demanded. Jackson didn't blink. His voice was calm, controlled. Mission priority shift. I need immediate access to the command floor. The guards hesitated. Jackson knew how they worked. They were programmed to recognize patterns, to detect deception. But they also weren't programmed to question a superior unit. Processing, the guard said. Jackson held his breath. Then, after 3 agonizing seconds, access granted. The massive gates slid open. Jackson walked inside, a betrayal set in stone. The core was a labyrinth of steel and shadows, the walls humming with unseen power. Jackson moved quickly, signaling for Ray and the rebels to follow through a hidden service door. They had minutes before the system realized the deception. And then, from the end of the corridor, I knew you'd come back. Jackson stopped dead in his tracks. Voss stood in the center of the hall, flanked by 2 elite soldiers. His black armor gleamed under the flickering lights, and his weapon was aimed, but not firing. Jackson exhaled. Voss, step aside. Voss's jaw tightened. I can't do that. Jackson took another step forward. They lied to us. Voss. They erased us. They turned us into killers without a choice. I remember now. And deep down, so do you. Voss's grip on his rifle didn't waver. I was given a purpose, Jackson. And so were you. Jackson shook his head. No, they didn't give us purpose. They took it from us. Silence stretched between them. The weight of years of *** loyalty, brotherhood, war, *** hanging in the air like a blade. Then Voss's voice softened. You were always the better soldier, he admitted. I should have seen it. The moment you hesitated, the moment you let that girl live. I knew. Jackson's chest tightened. Then stand with us. Voss exhaled. His finger hovered over the trigger. I can't. Jackson saw it, the conflict in his old friend's eyes, the crack in his programming, the small dying ember of free will. But it wasn't enough. He had to make a choice. And he had made it. I'm sorry, Jackson, Voss whispered. Then he fired. Jackson dodged. Barely. The bullet grazed past his shoulder, searing flesh. Ray reacted instantly. Gunfire erupted from both sides. The war inside the core had begun. The fall of the core. Alarms blared. The walls pulsed with red warning lights as the facility descended into chaos. Jackson and Voss fought, not as soldiers, but as men on opposite sides of a shattered past. Punches landed. Blood spilled. Every strike was a memory, every movement a story untold. Then, the moment came. Voss hesitated. Jackson didn't. In one swift motion, Jackson disarmed him, twisting the rifle from his hands and pressing it against his chest. Voss looked at him, breathing hard. Jackson held his gaze. You had your chance. Then, He turned away. Voss didn't stop him. Maybe some part of him was still human after all. A war that ends tonight. The rebels reached the main control room. Ray slammed a device onto the console, wires sparking as it began overriding the system. "We're in," she shouted. Jackson wiped blood from his face, his heart pounding. How long? 2 minutes. They didn't have 2 minutes. The sound of boots pounding down the hall sent ice through Jackson's veins. More soldiers, more of his kind. "Get it done," he told Ray. Then he turned to face them. He raised his weapon, standing between his people and the army that had built him. He wasn't running anymore. He wasn't afraid. Jackson Kane was here to finish what they started. The soldiers opened fire. Jackson charged. And the world exploded into war. The last stand. A war that ends tonight. The world was on fire. Gunfire cracked like thunder through the steel corridors of the core, the heart of the enemy's war machine. Jackson Kane moved like a shadow, his rifle spitting death as he cut through the soldiers standing between him and victory. This was it. For years, he had fought the wrong war. A soldier without a choice, a mind wiped clean, a weapon without a master. But tonight, he fought for himself. "Jackson, we're in." Ray's voice cut through the chaos over the comms. "We have control of the mainframe." Jackson ducked behind cover as bullets shredded the wall beside him, then shut it all down. "We're trying," she shouted back. "But we need time." Time was something they didn't have. The enemy reinforcements poured into the core like a tidal wave. Soldiers in black armor, eyes glowing with the red tint of total control. No hesitation, no fear, just blind, programmed obedience. Jackson knew them. He had been one of them. Now, they were his enemy. His fingers tightened around his rifle. He pushed off the wall, weaving through the storm of bullets. He wasn't running anymore. He was ending this. The cost of freedom. Ray and the rebels worked desperately inside the control room, hacking into the core's central system, their fingers flying across the glowing screens. Come on," Ray muttered, sweat dripping down her forehead. Every system in the core was connected. The soldiers, the drones, the defenses. If they could take control, they could shut everything down. But it wasn't that simple. Suddenly, the console screen flashed red. "Warning. System located on INITAT." Ray's stomach dropped. No. Jackson's voice came over the radio. "What's happening?" Ray slammed her fist against the console. "They locked us out. The system is fighting back." A voice echoed through the facility. Deep, cold, familiar. "You think you can end this?" Jackson's blood ran cold. He knew that voice. It wasn't an AI. It wasn't a machine. It was the man who had erased him. The master of the machine. A giant holographic projection flickered to life in the middle of the core. A man in a high-ranking military uniform, his face lined with age, but his eyes sharp and piercing. "Jackson Kane, you never should have remembered." Jackson's grip tightened on his weapon. "Wish I could say the same about you," he muttered. The man's cold, calculating gaze didn't waver. "You're an anomaly, a glitch in a perfect system. But glitches can be removed." Jackson felt rage rise in his chest. This was the man responsible, the one who stole his life. And now he was going to take it back. The hologram flickered. "I designed the core to be unbreakable. Do you think I would allow you to destroy everything we built?" Jackson didn't hesitate. "Watch me." He turned toward Ray. "Override the system manually. Whatever it takes." Ray hesitated. "That could overload the core and—" "I don't care," Jackson shouted. "Do it." She cursed under her breath. "All right, but if this thing blows up, I'm blaming you in the afterlife." She started working faster, bypassing the firewalls, pushing the system to its limits. Meanwhile, Jackson turned back to the battle. The enemy forces were regrouping. And in front of them, Voss. Jackson's former brother-in-arms. His final obstacle. Brother versus brother. The room fell silent for a moment. Jackson and Voss faced each other across the battlefield, the air between them thick with unspoken words. They had fought together, bulled together, killed together. Now, they would fight against each other. Voss, Jackson called out. Don't do this. Voss raised his weapon. No hesitation this time. You made your choice, Jackson, he said. Now I make mine. Jackson nodded. Then let's finish this. The two men clashed like titans. Gunfire erupted, but they were both too fast, too trained, too deadly. Jackson sidestepped, dodging a blast, rolling behind cover before Voss could pin him down. He grabbed a knife from his belt, throwing it. Voss dodged it with ease. They had trained together. They knew each other's every move, which meant Jackson had to do something unexpected. He charged. Voss wasn't ready. Jackson tackled him, slamming them both into a shattered control panel. Sparks exploded around them as they exchanged brutal blows. Fists, elbows, knees. Every strike held years of history. You don't have to fight for them, Jackson growled, slamming Voss against the console. Voss gritted his teeth. I'm not fighting for them. He twisted free, grabbing Jackson's wrist and flipping him over. Jackson hit the ground hard, pain shooting up his back. Voss stood over him, raising his weapon for the final shot. And for the first time, Jackson saw it. The hesitation. The crack in Voss's perfect obedience. You can still choose, Jackson said, his voice quiet. Voss's fingers hovered over the trigger. Then, he lowered his weapon. Jackson exhaled. For the first time, Voss had made a choice, and it wasn't to kill him. Behind them, Ray shouted, Jackson, it's done. Jackson whipped around. The console flickered. The core's systems shut down. A pulse of energy rippled through the facility, and suddenly, the soldiers stopped moving. Their eyes, once glowing red, dimmed. The war machine had collapsed. They had won. The price of freedom. The core was falling apart. Explosions rocked the facility as the power surged wildly out of control. We need to go, Ray yelled. Jackson turned back to Voss. Come with us. Voss shook his head. I need to clean up my own mess. Jackson didn't argue. He simply nodded. Then he ran. The rebels escaped as the core imploded, the ground shaking beneath their feet. Jackson didn't look back. For the first time, he wasn't running from something. He was running toward something new. Toward freedom. Epilogue. A new dawn. The sun rose over the ruins of the core. The war was over. Jackson stood at the edge of a broken world, watching as the rebels began rebuilding. He wasn't a soldier anymore. He wasn't a weapon. He was Jackson Kane. And for the first time in a long, long time, he was free. The end.